to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, February 16, 2021. As always, we're coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope all is well. So if you were just on the stream just a minute ago, for some reason the mic wasn't working. I don't know what was going on. Sometimes Streamlab just messes up, so I had to restart everything, so I apologize. And you guys are probably listening like, why can't I hear her? So sometimes it just happens that way. But anyways, one of the things that I want to talk about first is, if you're paying attention to my social media, is that we are talking about like I'm looking for people to do a research, because we are doing some research here at I Am Evolution, and we are looking for people to question and do some research on life experiences, your emotions, perceptions, things like that. And of course, this is 100% professional, 100% confidential. It'll be most likely a face-to-face interview and research, and we can also do Zoom as well if you're still not comfortable being around people. But we would really, really appreciate it and love it if you were able to do this for us, because this will help us grow and understand and help us produce more high-quality content for the shows and everything. So, all right, guys, this past Tuesday was Valentine's Day, or not past Tuesday, this past Sunday was Valentine's Day. You know what? The audio goes down, you got to restart everything, then it gets you all miscombobulated, and you know how it goes. So anyways, Valentine's Day was this Sunday, and I don't know if you guys celebrated Valentine's Day. You know me, I'm not big into holidays anymore, and I just never was, even as a child. I liked Halloween, and I liked, my birthday once in a while, and but I was still never big into holidays. But anyways, so what did you guys do? Did you guys celebrate it? Did you guys not? I know that when I was younger, it seemed like these type of holidays like Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, and all that stuff seemed bigger at the time. And it just doesn't seem like, maybe the last 10 years, it just doesn't seem like people are into them as much. I don't know. Maybe the world's changing. Who knows? But anyways, guys, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, LinkedIn, and Daily Motion. And of course, the replays, because we're on everything: Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Pandora, all that stuff, Google. But the links will be in the description below. So, anyways, let's get into tonight's show, because I really want to talk about, I really want to get into what is tonight's topic, because tonight's topic fascinates me, because I am big into psychology, and not just textbook psychology, because to my mind there's two different psychologies. But one of the things that one of the things that I get asked the most is, Miss Raina, why do we do the things we do? Why do I believe the things I believe? Why do I act and react the way I do? And that's one of the best questions that I honestly feel that we can ask ourselves, because when we look to learn about who we are, what we're doing, what's going on in life, what life is about, we have to ask ourselves, well, why? Well, why are we the way we are? Why are we doing the things that we do? Why are we reactive to certain situations, to certain people, to certain scenarios? And I know that people ask me all the time, and I watch people and I'm a big people watcher, and I watch people all the time repeat patterns over and over, or get upset at something, and I can see in their mind that they're upset at this situation or this idea because someone has a conflicting point of view. but they don't even know why they're upset at it. But they do, and they get into fights and our ideas of relationships and friendships. We have all these ideas. We have all these ideas of why life should be the way it is, but we don't understand what's going on inside us for us to understand. And this is something we must really, truly start to get at. We have to asking ourselves, well, why? Who am I? What am I about? Why am I doing the things I'm doing? Why are people doing the things they're doing? Why are they reacting that way? Why is all this chaos? Like right now, have you ever asked yourselves with the COVID situation, why some people it doesn't bother and some people are freaking out? Why some people don't believe in it and some people do? Because it's all conditioning. It's all perception. It's all these ideas that we have, and depending on how we're raised, what we're raised with, and the evolution of our soul and what we're trying to accomplish here during our lifetime, as far as our structure of our life, is what we're going to be conditioned to. And let me tell you this, that we're all conditioned. Every single one of us. I'm conditioned, you're conditioned, they're conditioned. There's not a single person out here that has some sort of conditioning to them. Why? Because that's the way society is. It depends on your geographical location, your culture, your family. It depends on where you go to school. It depends on so many aspects. Because why is this country predominantly Catholic and Christian? Well, because that's what's taught here, is that you're taught to believe a certain way. Why is in China, is it predominantly Buddhist? Well, because they're taught that way. Why in Russia are they taught, and so you go through all the different countries and all the different areas, and you start to realize, well, belief systems are nothing more than conditioning, because that's really what it boils down to. It's not that we actually believe what it is we believe. It's just that we've been told it so many times that it holds to be true. And this is why I love the subject of classical and operant conditioning, because when we really start to break down, even before we go on a spiritual quest or an idea of self-discovery, we have to understand the fundamental basics of our mind and the way society is and how we adapt to society. Because so many of us don't like to believe, we all like to believe that we're free thinkers. We all like to believe that we do our own thing and we're individuals, but the fact is we're not. And that's the illusion that happens in life. And I know for some of us that may bother us, and that may be like, and you may push back right away and say, Miss Raina doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm an individual. Well, in that moment that you get that pushback, that's telling you anytime the ego is offended, it's because there's a conditioning. And so that means that when someone else has a difference of opinion than you, or a belief system or an idea, and you take it personally and you have this need to tell somebody that they're wrong and they're right or whatever, or you start pushing away and say, well, that's their belief system, that's conditioning, because the ego is offended. Because when conditioning happens, it accepts what it has been conditioned to as truth. And that's why truth is so subjective, because truth and belief systems go hand in hand in our society, but we don't really realize that they're totally different. And so classical conditioning is basically learning by association between events. So what does that mean? That means that we learn by association. So, and we're going to get into this in a minute of the thing, but we learn by association by events. And this was done by Ivan Pavlov, who was in 1903, who was a Russian physiologist. And he basically understood that there's if you take two stimuli that are linked and that are linked together and to produce a learned response. So if you take two stimuli that are linked together and produce a learned response. So the most famous project that we have is the idea of the experiment with the dogs. Everybody knows Pavlov's dogs, and Pavlov's dogs suggest that what he did was he did an experiment where he took dogs and he put them on a thing, and basically he trained them to salivate every time they heard a bell tone or when the bell rang. And so what that means, and every time he rang the bell, he fed the dog something. And so what ended up happening was the dog, after a while, got trained to understand that every time I hear this bell, all of a sudden I know I'm going to get food. And then so what happens? Because the brain says, hey, I'm going to get food, the body starts to react and the dogs start to salivate. So after a while, he started to understand that, hey, if I ring the bell, the dog's expecting a treat. The dog starts to get excited, starts to salivate, and the body has this conditioned response. There's two stimuli that's going on to produce a learned response. And so what ended up happening was he realized that. He said, you know what? He's like, this must be how people are responsive to stimuli. That if we hear something, or if we're trained to believe something so long, that we will produce a response, an involuntary response that we cannot control. And this is why I absolutely love classical and operant conditioning, is because of this very idea. Because if you take it, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but if you take anything, like I know for many times I do my 5 no-nos. Miss Raina's 5 no-nos are no, good, bad, right, wrong, positive, negative, backwards, forwards, better, worse, right? And so if you take those 5 no-nos by themselves, and how many of you, even though you listen to the show all the time, you still go out and you say, well, this is good, this is bad, I want something good to happen, COVID's going on, let's talk about something good, or this is, I'm not going for it, because the conditioned response, or the conditioning, was you were taught to believe that there is such thing as good and bad, right and wrong, positive, negative, backwards, forwards, better, worse. How many people out there believe that positive and negative are good versus bad, good versus evil? It's not. You try to be positive, but you don't really realize that it's not positive as in good. Yes, let's go to the light because that's going to make me happy and balanced, and let's shun the dark, let's shun the negative because that's evil and toxic, and that it's not like that. But because we're conditioned that way, that's what we believe. And so it's an impossible fight for us to be positive, because we don't know what we're chasing at. And so we chase this idea of positivity, and we always fail at it. Why? Because it doesn't exist. Because positive and negative are attractions. They're polarity. It's two, like if you take 2 balls of polarity, one positive charge and one negative, and you they'll attract each other, but they can never get to each other, and they spin and spin. And that is what we call balance. That is what we call positive and negative. Negative isn't bad. It's our shadows telling us that we have to get back to who we are. But we deem it as bad. We deem it as hurtful and all these things because we don't understand, because we've been conditioned to say, well, there's a God out there that's taking notes and punishing you for everything. And so these ideas we accept as truth, but they are not. They are beliefs, and a lot of times our belief systems are based on ideas that we do not understand. And so classical conditioning teaches us that. It teaches us that we are all conditioned. If we have an idea, if we have a way, if we're bothered by something, if we can't understand why we're doing something, and it's because we're conditioned to an idea that's most likely an idea that is not true. And so we have to understand that in that way. And one of the best ways that we can understand our mind, classical or operant condition, is through reflective or automatic learning. So is our idea of classical conditioning, is it reflective? Is it automatic? Do we operate on an idea of being reflective or automatic? Because when we break those things down, we have to look at our lives and say, hey, am I an automatic type of person? Do I respond and react and think automatically? Or am I the reflective type? Because what is automatic? Automatic type of learning is instinctive, it's unconscious, it's fast, it's effortless, it's mindless. And it basically, your own inertia prevents you from doing something. So that means like it's automatic. Like you go to do something, your body stops because your mind is like, wait a minute, it's calculating these ideas or these thought processes. Or you go to say something, all of a sudden you just stop and you're like, oh, no, maybe I shouldn't. Because the body is saying, hey, wait a minute, this is instinctive. If I do this, the consequences could be this, and it happens so fast that a lot of times it's automatic. There's times when we're driving and we see someone pull out, and all of a sudden we stop and we slam on our brakes and we do things that we normally don't do, and we're like, wow, how did I avoid that? Because that's automatic. That's instinctive. That's unconscious. It's fast. It's effortless. It's mindless. That means, like I said, your own inertia is preventing you from doing something that you want to do. And a lot of times that's where self-doubt comes in. When we're conditioned with the idea of self-doubt, we're basically, or insecurity or anything like that, most of the time we're on an automatic type of thinking. We're on an automatic type of thought because we're giving in to our needs. We're giving in to our instincts. We're giving in to what is our most basic primal fear. What is these ideas that we're breaking down? What ideas are we doing where where we're just reacting? And a lot of times we do, don't we? And when we go out, most of us, especially when there's trauma or there's drama or whatever, when people are out and they say something or someone cuts us off, it's our instinct, right, to go and flick them off and get all upset and do these type of things because that's automatic. It's the easiest way to influence somebody. And a lot of times, like let's take, for example, commercials. Commercials go right after your automatic instincts. Why? Because they want to train you. They want to make you believe that you need their product. And a lot of people do, because we're searching for something inside. We're searching for ourselves. We're searching for self-love and acceptance and all these ideas. And because we're conditioned to look outside of the box for who we are, that these commercials and these marketing agents say, hey, you know what? People are secure. They're gullible. They will buy anything. They'll believe anything. And they prey on that. They prey on those ideas. And so there's a lot of these commercials make urgency. How many of you guys, when we were younger, right, used to have the idea of the infomercials, right? And the infomercials always said, hey, call now within the next 20 minutes and you'll receive this, this, and this. But hurry up, supplies are lasting, or supplies aren't going to last. Well, why did they say that? Because they wanted to create urgency. When urgency plays on the social or on classic conditioning, on your automatic side of way of learning, it's instinctive. You say, oh my God, I need that. And then all of a sudden you buy it, you get it, you feel great. And then it sits in the cupboard, whatever it is. And you hardly ever use it after a couple times because it was an automatic, instinctive type of mindset. It created an urgency, a false sense of urgency, and that's why we do the things we do. That's why we are, so many of us chase relationships, we chase money, we chase fame, we chase sports, we live through sports because we need that instant gratification through automatic learning. It's effortlessly, it's instinctive. Hey, I could do this, and that's the reason why we adapt to our beliefs, religion, spirituality. Hey, I get a lot of people that sit there and they'll say, well, you know what, I used to be religious, but now spirituality seems the way. And it's, well, but again, spirituality, and depending on what type you're doing, has limitations too, and has conditioning in it. I've met some very wonderful people, then Buddhists and Hindu and all that, and they are just as conditioned to believe certain ideas as religious people are. And so it doesn't matter whether the idea of religion, politics, whatever it is, spirituality, sports, anything, whatever it is, races, it doesn't matter. I mean, I know people that fight over cars, the type of car. I see it all the time on my social media. So many people on my social media fight over the type of cars. They make fun of each other for having different cars. And it's not just fun and games. I could tell that sometimes it's mean and vulgar. And it's like, and this type of automatic thinking is because we don't understand why. Someone told us that this type of car brand or this religion or this way of thinking or this side of politics is better than the other. And so because you've heard that so many times, you've adapted. So you do rather than believe. It's out of habit. And this is what most people rely on. This is what the way most people react. Now, there are some advantages to having automatic instincts or automatic learning, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But reflective learning takes us a little bit differently. Reflective learning is just what it says. It's self-conscious and deliberate. And so what does that mean? That means it's cognitive it's cognitive thought and slow. It's very labor intensive. And so what does that mean? So that means when we're outside and we're looking at the pond, or we're looking at the sky, and we're pondering life, or we're pondering things, or we're pondering situations that have happened, that's reflective thinking. And yes, it sounds common sense. It really does. But it's very self-conscious. It's very aware. You're realizing you're aware. And this is hard for a lot of people because most people are truly not aware of themselves. They like to think that they are, and it's a very hard thing to understand. A lot of us like to think that, hey, we're very conscious of who we are, we know who we are, but the fact is a lot of times most of us are chasing our ideas of classical conditioning. Like the dog, every time it hears the bell, it salivates thinking it's going to get a treat. Every time every time something triggers you, you're going to have that same automatic reaction. And it's in reflective thinking that it's harder to influence. Why? Because you ponder more. You sit there and say, well, you know what? I know that looks good, but let's sit and think about it. Well, I want to buy this house and it looks good. The guy made it seem, or the girl made it seem like, hey, this was the best house, like it was solid gold. But you know what? I want to think about this a minute because I want to make sure. I want to do my research. I want to really ponder it. I want to think about the information that's presented to me. And this is so very important to who we are. But, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, if you're back and just joining us, we are talking about classical and operant conditioning. So back to reflective. So we have to be able to think about the information that we're talking about. We have to accept. We start accepting. When we're reflective, we start to accept the responsibility of who we are, the choices that we're making, and the ideas that we're sharing. So that means that even though I was raised Catholic, I had to be reflective. I said, you know what, for me, this was not something that gelled with me. It was not something that made sense to me. And so I had to be reflective and said, you know what, that's fine for other people, but what is it that I want? What is it that I'm looking for? What is it that I want from me? And I went out into the world and I found it. My parents wanted me to grow up in an HVAC business. My dad wanted me to take over the business, but I knew that wasn't for me. I could have been automatic and just followed the conditioning, because my dad put it in my head that I will take over the family business and I will be greater than him and do all this stuff. And I heard that every day of my life for I don't know how, for like 16 years. And finally, I said, you know what? I have to think about what I want. I have to take about responsibility what I want to do, because this is my life. And this made it harder to influence, and people couldn't understand it. People who are conditioned can't understand those that think for themselves. Like COVID has really brought out a lot of people who that are conditioned, and they don't see it. And that's okay, because you still have to have compassion for people who live in fear and people who are conditioned in that sense, because they buy into the fear. Whereas people who are a little bit more reflective thinkers are still conditioned to ideas, but they think about this idea. Well, hey, yes, yes, we know that COVID does exist, but does it really exist the way it is? We know the media lies. We know that a lot of the hospitals aren't seeing the numbers. We see all this other stuff, and I'm not going to get into COVID. So as a reflective thinker, whether you believe in it or not, you still have to say, hey, you know what? Well, what is this? What is this? This information is coming to me. It's my responsibility to understand it and think about it so that I'm aware of the motives of not only myself, but the information that's coming into me. And then I could play it smart. I could do these things. I could I could do whatever I want because now I have information and I have options to that information. And this is what's so great about classical conditioning, is that classical conditioning teaches us that. And so one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, is it a necessary precursor to action? So when we have motives and we have responsibility and we have this idea that, yes, there has to be action to these ideas, well, then if I apply this knowledge, does it make it better? Is it mindfulness? Is the mindfulness being better? Is automatic, or is being automatic or reflective thinker better than each other, or which one is better? And it's not really that one is better than the other, because there is time that automatic learning and automatic thinking must go into play. There are also times where reflective needs to go into play as well. And so we have to start looking at our actions. The number one thing that we have to start understanding is to take self-control and not to just rely on whatever society has told us, whatever our parents have told us, and ask ourselves, really, why do I believe this? Well, why do I believe that there's a God? Well, because I've heard it. Not that there actually is. You don't know that there is a God. You don't. No matter how hard you're going to say, well, I believe in God and I feel it, you don't. Because belief is so strong, conditioning is so strong, that when we accept something as truth, it feels real. And that's why we fight over it, is because we think that what we feel to be belief is truth, is actually our conditioning telling us, nope, this is the way it is. I don't want to hear any other way. And that's why we fight over things like religion and politics and all sorts of things. Those are the two major things, right? Religion and politics. Those are the two bigs. And so we have to take control. We have to take self-control. We have to be responsible. We have to take into our account the rationality of our actions. We have to avoid the temptations of giving in to these ideas. When we give in to these ideas, it creates fear, and that's what. And we're going to get into a few other types of ideas a little bit, but especially with operant conditioning and stuff, because there's some reward, punishment, and everything. But this is what I'm talking about. So the two most basic forms of associative learning breaks down into two: classical conditioning, which is a stimuli type of conditioning, and operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is a schedule of reinforcements until behavior learned. So in other words, it's reward and punishment, and we're going to get into operant in a little bit. But the first stage let me break it down into three stages for you. So the first stage, before somebody's conditioned, is basically the idea is that unconditional stimuli creates unconditional response in people. So an unconditional stimuli creates an unconditioned response in people. So what does this mean? So let's say like we're walking through our house and we stub our toe. Well, what proceeds to happen? A conditioned response. Boom, we stub our toe. Instantly, we have a conditioned response. We have created it because the condition teaches us after the pain, and we all know how painful stubbed toes are. We understand, well, hey, instantly, I know next time not to stub my toe, to be more cautious, because this is going to cause me pain. So the condition happened instantly before somebody was conditioned, because we were unaware of the consequences or the rewards that were going to happen. So this stage usually has little effect on people at first because they're unaware of of an unconditioned stimuli before it happens. The second stage is during conditioning. So this is when stimulus are produced for no response, it's neutral. And so what does that mean? That means that when you have an unconditional stimuli now becoming a conditioned stimuli. So that means like whenever you hear or feel or see something, your response is going to be whatever you expect. So let's take, for example, if I know that every time, let's say like I dated someone and this type of person used to like this and it used to drive me insane. And then all of a sudden we broke up, we moved on, and all of a sudden down the road, a year, 2 years, 3 years, I've run into someone and someone's doing the same thing or likes the same thing. And then all of a sudden I see it, I feel all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm recognizing. And then all of a sudden that response is, the expected response is going to be like, boom, this is what's going to happen, because you're expecting that trigger to be the same as the one before. And so we have to look at it and we have to sit there and say, well, okay, and this is where the disconnection comes in, because we attach ourselves. Remember, it's all about association and condition and classical conditioning, because when we're conditioning, we're associating an idea with a feeling, a fear, an emotion, whatever it is. And so we have to look at ourselves and move past that. The third stage is after conditioning. And this is when a newly conditioned stimulus associated with a conditioned response. So every time I eat cheese, I know that I get bad stomach cramps, and I'm going to, it's going to affect me, and then I'm going to have irregular bowel movements. I'm going to have gas. I'm going to have all these things, or whatever the stimulus or whatever it is. But I'm just using that as an extent. So you learn that, hey, after so many times, I'm not going to do this anymore. After a while, because after a while, if I don't eat the cheese, I become healthy. I'm working, I eat healthy, I keep doing it. Hey, this is the thing. The more I eat healthy, the more I exercise, the more I do this, I'm going to get this result. And the more I eat cheese, the more I eat McDonald's, the more I eat Burger King, the more I don't do anything and just sit around. This is the type of idea. So that's the after conditioning as well. Classical conditioning shows us the importance of how we learn about our surroundings, our environment, and what we're doing. Because believe it or not, and it's how we respond to those interactions is what makes us conditioned. Because the things that we're most conditioned to in our life is we're conditioned to judgment, we're conditioned to hate, we're conditioned to our belief systems, we're conditioned to politics, we're even conditioned to morals and ethics. And a lot of times people will say, well, no, morals and ethics aren't conditional. Yes, they are. Morals and ethics are judgments. Judgments are what? Well, hey, if you do that, I'm going to judge you. I don't like that shirt. I don't like the way you look. I don't like what you have to say. I don't, without even knowing the person, or if you know the person or whatever, you're making judgments on ideas. And moral and ethics are the same way. What, as the old saying of different strokes went, is what might be right for some may not be right for all, right? So if one person enjoys one thing, like, hey, I enjoy doing this. Some people don't like what I do, and that's okay. To them, maybe their morals, clash with mine, and maybe my ethics clash with theirs. Who knows? But that's the idea that we're talking about. Morals and ethics are nothing more than judgments. The moment when you say, they shouldn't be doing this because they shouldn't be doing that because that's right away you're into judgment, hate, and those are conditions. We are conditioned to hate. We are conditioned to judge. We are conditioned by our belief systems. We are conditioned by politics. That is why if you think that a president is going to save you or ruin your life, that is conditioning. If you think that a person around there is going to, like a relationship is going to save you or destroy your life, that's conditioning. Because how many of us are waiting? So many of us are. One of the biggest things in spirituality is we're all looking for our twin flames. We're all looking for our soulmates. Oh, I can't wait to find the person we love because that's going to fix me. That's conditioning. Because as children, we're taught, especially women, we're taught that you got to wait for the guy to come save you and on his shiny horse and take you away and take care of you and live happily ever after. And and men, you're conditioned to be like, oh, well, when I get married, I get another mommy who's going to do everything, wait on me hand and foot, and these type of ideas happen. And so you have to understand that these conditionings affect our way of lifestyle, affect our way of living, and affect the way we're looking at things. And that's one of the things that we have to look. So operant conditioning is, and I absolutely love operant conditioning because B.F. Skinner was a psychologist that really understood that the idea of he actually based his work off Thorndyke, Edward Thorndyke's 1989 Law of Effect. And before we get into that, so operant conditioning is instrumental conditioning. That basically means that you're learning by consequence. So you're learning by consequence. That means that consequences of there's consequences of response determine if it's going to be repeated. So that means that there's scheduled reinforcement, reward, and punishment. So basically, if you can understand operand, all you have to remember is reward and punishment, because a lot of people understand that, hey, if I do this, then I'm going to have this happen to me. If I do this, karma is going to get me, or karma is going to reward me. A god or a goddess is going to punish me or reward me. I'm going to go to heaven. I'm going to go to hell. But this is not true. None of that is true. And as we grow, as we evolve through our humanity, and a lot of people will start to understand that as well, that there is no heaven in the sense of reward. There is no hell as the sense of punishment. There is no karma out to get you. These ideas are created by youthful society that doesn't understand what's going on. And so because we don't have the consciousness to grasp who we are and what we're doing, we like to think that there's a reward and punishment. And it is true that a lot of times we are controlled by reward and punishment. How many times when you were a child, and I knew I was growing up the same way, that I was told, well, if you do this, you're going to be punished for that. Well, that's most likely that, like, if I do that, I know that if I get a reward, I'm going to likely repeat this process. That's why so many of us chase sports, because we're looking for who we are. So many of us value championships and touchdowns in sports because we're looking for who we are in self. And so the reward is instant. It's gratification. And when the team wins, we win, and we're champions, we feel great. But it's superficial and it's false. And so we repeat the process over and over because we're getting instant rewards. Whereas punishment is going to have the occurrence less frequency. So if I stick a screwdriver into the light socket and I get zapped and blown half across my living room, I'm going to say, whoa, that did not feel good. That's something that I'm not going to do again. And we base our lives on these type of ideas. We live basically reward and punishment. And what I love about the reward and punishment is because B.F. Skinner took Edward Thorndyke's Law of Effect from and took it and said, you know what, and ran with it. And so, because if you're not familiar with, let me back up. If you're not familiar with Edward Thorndyke's Law of Effect, basically he suggested that basically his suggestion was responses that produce a satisfying effect in a particular situation become more likely to occur again in that situation, and responses that produce a discomforting effect become less likely to occur in that situation. And so he realized that back in the 1800s, and he said, you know what, hey, this is something I understand. So what he did, and I love this experiment, is he took a cat and he used the cat in puzzle boxes, and he said, well, I'm going to place this cat inside of a box, and I'm going to hang fish outside of the box. But this box isn't just a regular box. It's going to have areas where you can get out of, areas where you can't get out of, and he's going to put a lever there with a trap door to open up and back to see if the cats understand. And so he put the cat inside the box and allowed the cat to sit there and to smell the fish. And because the cat wanted the fish, how long is it going to take for the cat to get outside the box? Is it going to be able to get smart enough to figure a way out? And eventually the cat stumbled upon the lever, opening the cage or opening the box, and the cat got the fish. So then what happened was, Edward put the cat back in the box and hung more fish up and seeing if the fish, and he did that over and over, and all of a sudden before you knew it, the cat ended up realizing, hey, if I hit this lever, I'm going to get the fish. And the cat, as soon as he would put the cat into the box, the cat would go right to the lever, push it, and go grab the fish. And then he realized, well, wow. So if this is a reward, the cat knew at first. The cat wasn't sure what to do, and it was confused, and it took a while. But then by accident, it stumbled and realized, hey, every time I go in this box, if I hit this lever, I get fish and I get fed. I get a reward. And because we respond on reward, and that makes us feel good, all of a sudden, hey, this is the idea. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after these messages from I Am Evolution.
The human experience is changing, and consciousness is evolving into something higher than any of us could ever imagine. As we transform into more sentient beings, a new world of connected consciousness is taking place. Welcome to I Am Evolution, the movement in human development that transforms the human experience into a deeper consciousness through perspective and duality. Are you ready to be a part of the next stage in human evolution? Call I Am Evolution today to schedule your appointment at 561-318-0006. That's 561-318-0006. Or email us at iamevolution@protonmail.com.
All right, everybody, we are back, and if you're just joining us, we are on the last half, and yes, I know the time is a little off because we had some technical difficulties at first, but yes, so I think we're behind like 6 minutes or something. But anyways, yes, so back to the cat in the box, and so Edward Thorndyke realized this, and it's similar to the mouse and the mouse trying to get the cheese. We've all heard about we put a mouse in a maze, and one piece of cheese or one type of food has electric shock and one doesn't. Well, after a while, the mouse understands, well, if I go for this, then I'm not going to want food, and I'm going to get electric shocked. And they even found it that mice won't eat and starve to death. After a while, they think that all their food has electricity going through it, where they're going to get shocked. And so people do this. People live their lives based on reward and punishment. I know so many of us, we do. We get stressed, we get overworked, we're unhappy with who we are, we're trying to find ourselves, and we all of a sudden we start to realize, well, you know what, I base my whole life on whether or not someone likes me, whether or not someone's going to accept me, whether or not my mom or dad or niece or nephew or my friends love me, or if people love me, whether or not somebody else, like a romantic relationship, loves me. And so we base ourselves with this, and we punish ourselves too. We punish ourselves mentally, emotionally, and this is a form of operant conditioning. So there's 3 types of operant conditioning, and the first type is neutral, and basically it is what it is. It basically responses from the environment that are neither increase or decrease the probability of a behavior being repeated. So there are reinforcers, and that's basically what it says. So basically it's an increase of the probability of a behavior being repeated. This can be both positive or negative. And then there's the punisher. And of course, what do you think the punisher is going to do? It's going to decrease the likelihood of the behavior being repeated. And punishment usually weakens behavior, as what they're saying. So you have a neutral, which doesn't really affect you. And a lot of times guilt is, I like to say guilt is an emotion that a lot of times goes neutral, because at first guilt is a punisher. It makes us beat us up. It makes us decrease the likelihood of what we want to do. But then after so often of doing something, it doesn't affect us anymore. And then it becomes neutral because, hey, you know what? I've lied so much to people. I've been dishonest. I've done this, I've done this. And you start to believe your lies. You start to believe your conditioning. And then it becomes where it's a neutral, where it doesn't increase or decrease because it doesn't matter anymore. Reinforcers are the basically reward type of things, and punishers are also, basically the whatchamacallit. So positive reinforcement is the idea that something is going to be strengthened. It's the reward. It's the leading to the reward of the repetition. So a lot of times people will say, well, if I, like a dog, if you give me your paw, I'm going to give you a treat. So what happens? At first, the dog doesn't know what to give you to give the paw, right? And so you put the paw in your hand and then you give it the treat. You do that over and over. And finally, the dog says, oh, well, every time she puts out her hand or he puts out her hand, I'm going to give her my paw because I'm going to get something good to eat. And that's positive reinforcement. It's the same as if someone gets good grades and the parent offers them money, maybe $5 for each A or something like that. That's positive reinforcement. So it's strengthening the reward. The reward is reinforcing the stimuli at hand, and that's positive. Negative reinforcement is the same. It's the removal of an adverse stimulus, which is rewarding to the person. So basically, it strengthens the behavior to make sure that it stops or removes the pleasant experience. And so basically, say like you start to get bad grades when you were young, and your parents, what do? They punish you, right? They take away your car, they take away your phone, because that type of negative reinforcement is supposed to teach you, well, if you do this, you're gonna lose this. And this is a very, very harsh way of dealing with it. And honestly, both positive and negative reinforcements, in my point of view, have their drawbacks. And same with punishment. Punishment weakens. It's supposed to design to weaken or eliminate the response, but this can be very unpleasant because it can instill fear. And that's the hardest part about it, is that we don't understand what what these ideas do. How many of us got whacked in the back of the head when we were kids, or spanked all the time, or whatever you can think of? And what did it do? Yes, it stopped you from doing certain things, but out of fear. And then it creates a psychological effect of what's going on later in life, because all of a sudden now it's designed to instill fear. You better not do that, child, or you're gonna get the hand, or you're gonna get my belt. And my dad used to do that. My dad used to, when we used to get, a little pushy or whatever, he used to raise his stomach to get at his belt. And once we saw the stomach going up and then to go for his belt, man, me, my friends, whoever, my sister, her friends would take off running, because we knew that the punishment part of reinforcement was coming, that we needed to stop acting or saying this or having fun or whatever, because we were going to get punished. And that wasn't negative reinforcement, that was punishment reinforcement, because that was instilled fear. This can invoke traumatic and impactful ideas psychologically for us to not understand, and we live that way. That's why so many of us are conditioned, like when COVID came around, why we're so conditioned to fear this a form of a flu that's been around for 2 decades, and that because we hear these things and we're so conditioned to punishment. Well, if I don't get this, if I don't get away, if I don't do these things, then what's the punishment? I'm going to die. And so that type of conditioning stems from other type of conditioning that we're associated with as we were growing up through childhood and through a teenage and everything like that. And so what are the psychological effects that happen? Because I see we only got like 12 minutes or something like that. So one of the things that I want to last talk about is the psychological effects of both operant and classical conditioning, because a lot of times we look at these ideas and we say, well, it sounds good if I reward something, if I reward this person, if I give them treats or money or whatever it is, well, then they're going to reinforce that behavior. They're going to do what I want them to do. If I punish them in this way, then they're going to stop doing what I want them to do. But we got to really think about the big scope here of the ideas of conditioning, because classical conditioning basically trains people to do and not to think. And that's the hardest part about it. It trains you to be a more automatic type of thinker. And those people are subject to fear. Those people are subject to being judgmental and being more there, because they've accepted things to be truthful without any thought process behind it. And so this trains habits. This is why you have habits that you do. A lot of us don't understand, well, why do I act this way? Why do I constantly pick the same type of, toxic person? Why do I constantly pick the same abusive person, or the people that are going to let me down, or whatever it is, the people that aren't going to like me? Well, that's because you're conditioned to that. The conditioning has started someplace else, and it's trained you not to think, only to react on an emotional basis. And because you're trained to pick out those people that are going to let you down, or those things that are going to do, you end up doing that. And it's the same for people that are on drugs, that are in rehab, what do? They try to condition you to believe in a god or a goddess or their way because they think it's going to save you. They think that's going to stop the pattern. For most people, it doesn't. They relapse over and over and over because they're not training. They're not solving the root of the problem. They're just trying to recondition you to believe something else, to instill fear in you in hopes that you'll, change your ways. But it doesn't, like 99.9% of the time, it doesn't work. And so we have to look at these. And what the problem is with classical conditioning is we lose our individuality. And that's the most important thing. In order for us to understand who we are as people, we have to remain an individual. That means we have to, I get it. There's a lot of people that love this show, and there's a lot of people that don't like this show. And when I walk in a room, there's people that come up to me and love to talk to me, and there's people that look at me like I'm Medusa with the snakes coming out, and I'm going to turn them into stone if I look at them. And that's okay, because I understand the evolution of where they're at, and I understand the evolution of where I'm at as well. And the conditioning is that I have to understand not to be so reactive to people that are conditioned, because I was once there too. And there's certain areas I guarantee you that I'm conditioned to, because that's what life is about, is not saying, well, that, hey, I'm not conditioned anymore, I'm not these things because I teach this subject or I do anything like that, because there's always somewhere in the mind, in the aspect of our ideas and our trauma and everything else that we're conditioned to. That's why we sabotage things. I know lately, with what things have been going around here, with what's been going around in my personal life, there's a couple of people in my life that have sabotaged things, and that have come in my life that say, well, one of the things I do is sabotage things. And I'm like, well, why do you do that? I don't know why. Well, because you're conditioned to, make sure things blow up in your face so that you could say, see, I'm not worth it. I'm not these ideas. And that's where it starts to get tricky. So when we get into things like healthier habits, we have to recondition ourselves. When we started out at the gym, our muscles aren't into it. It's harder for us to work out. It's harder to eat healthy, especially when we come with food with high processed sugars and starches and everything. It's hard to eat salads, and it's hard to eat healthy vegan stuff and non-dairy stuff. It's hard because our bodies are used to different things. So we have to condition our mind, our body, to accept different types of food. And then once it's conditioned, boom, it wants it, because it's like, wow, this is something that's really going to help us. But again, we have to understand that. Operant conditioning, like I told you, trains us to be reward and punishment type of thinking. And so that's where most of us live. The truth is, we only do stuff if we're going to get rewarded and punishment. Or reward and punishment. I put out this idea. I'm like saying, hey, we're doing research. I need volunteers. Now, if I said, hey, I'm doing research and you're going to get this, this, and this, I guarantee you the number of people that would reach out to me would double or triple compared to if it was just volunteering, because they're not getting anything out of it, because we're so conditioned to, if we get good grades, we're going to get this. If we win at sports, we're going to get this. If we get married, we're going to get this. If we find this, we're going to get this. But all this is an illusion. It's all an illusion of who we are, what we're thinking, because it's really not true. If I do this is going to happen to me. Oh my God, I got to stay on the narrow path, and I got to do all this stuff, and I can't live my life being it, because if I don't get into a heaven, or if I don't get into the other side, if I don't make this jump, I know a lot of people have been fearing about this jump, and they're like, if I don't make this jump, oh my God, my life is just not going to mean anything. And that's the illusion of being conditioned, is the fear goes into it. I'm either going to be rewarded or I'm going to be punished based on what it is. So what you're seeking isn't truth, because a person of truth doesn't need to seek reward or punishment. They are. Remember, a long time ago when I talked about duality and neutrality, because remember, you have a positive and negative polarity, and the goal is to be in neutrality. It's to be neutral. And that that doesn't mean that you're positive or negative. And I don't mean positive as in happy and negative as in sad. I just mean in that idea. And so if we're seeking reward to us would be positive and punishment to us would be negative. And so you have to remove that way of thinking. You have to get out of that way of thinking and stop being true, because the only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to expand yourself, the only way you're going to understand who you are and the world around you is to get out of conditioning, is to get out of being either classical conditioning or out of operant conditioning, and start moving into an idea of being reflective. Yes, automatic learning is great in some areas, but reflective learning really helps us see who we are and what we're doing. And if you're going around chasing money, chasing relationships, chasing politics, thinking that one side is right versus the other and better, and religion and spirituality is better than religion, or religion, this is all an illusion, and we must be able to do that, because the truth is the consequence of it all keeps you stuck in that loop. You're never going to get out of it. You think you're getting out of it. That's why you fail in those areas, because you think that, oh, well, if I go positive, or if I stay religious and love God, or if I go to spirituality, or if I make this jump, everything's going to change in my life. But it's not, because you're stuck in that loop of operant conditioning, reward and punishment. I got to do this because of this. It's not true. That's why our relationships fail. That's why our friendships fail. That's why we sabotage things. That's why we blow things up. That's why things go boom, because of our conditioning. So really quick, because I know I only got I don't even have a minute. I can't even talk about the psychological aspect. So I think on this week's sessions, I think we're going to continue with the psychological aspects of classical conditioning on sessions. If you're not familiar with sessions, we do a show every Saturday. It's a small 20-minute segment on the website, but it is a paid subscription. It's $5.99 a month. And basically we do small private 20-minute shows, and that where we go into either from the shows that we do on Tuesdays, or we go into new topics all together and we talk about a lot of fun stuff. So if you're not a part of that, please make sure you are, because that is definitely sessions is definitely fun that you don't want to miss. So all right, guys, that's our show for tonight. God, it went by so fast, and I gotta apologize. I was so dyslexic today. It's been one of those weeks. I've been doing some intensive meditation, and I noticed that my brain is just kind of scattered, and my thought process really isn't going. But next week I plan to be back. So all right, guys, if you want to follow us on our Facebook, follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/Transcendental Transformation. Our YouTube is Transcendental Transformation Radio Show. Visit my website, soulandspiritguide.com. Sign up for the newsletter to receive special hidden shows, VIP access to the website, and special guest offers. If you have any questions, email me at transcendentaltransformations@gmail.com. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.